Hi, this is Keith. I'm one of the developers of the Elm plugin for IntelliJ, and I'd like to show you some of the new features that we've added in the last couple months. One of the new features in the Elm plugin for IntelliJ is that you can now run elm-test from directly within the editor. So let's add a test here. We're going to write a basic test that we expect to succeed. And now we're going to right-click the file and choose Run Tests. This invokes elm-test, and the test succeeded. Great. Now let's add a test that will fail. Reformat. I'm going to hit Control-R to rerun the tests. And the first test succeeded, but the second test failed, as we expected. So let's look at the difference. On this line it reads of the pine trees, and on this one it reads of the elms. So that's not right. Let's fix that. Rerun. And now both tests are green. Great. Another new feature in the Elm plugin for IntelliJ is support for WebGL and the GLSL language. There's games like elm-test, I guess that's how it's pronounced, or Moggy, that use WebGL to render this kind of retro platformer. So that Elm has had support for GLSL embedded in the language for a long time now. But if you're writing this kind of code, generally you have your Elm code like this, and then you have some kind of literal block of GLSL code. There's no syntax highlighting, there's no code completion, etc. But we now support injecting the GLSL language support into this literal. So I can search in the marketplace for this free plugin, GLSL support. I'll install it, restart the IDE. And now it's going to reindex the code because new plugins were installed. And as we can see, we now have syntax highlighting within the GLSL block within this Elm program. And this allows you to do things like code completion and just generally work with GLSL code more easily. The Elm plugin for IntelliJ also detects unused code. So in this case, this file from elm-test, there's a function called dark blue, and it's never used. If I search for its usages, it's just the function itself. Whereas like dark green, if I search for its usages, it's being used here on this render screens function. So this thing is no longer being used, and we'd like to delete it. But we can also see that it's being exposed up here. Normally you'd have to scroll up to the top and go manage your exposing list, but if you have the cursor on a function and you hit Option Enter, you can get this intention to remove it from the exposing list. Now it's no longer being exposed, and then I can select the entire function and delete it. Now let's suppose that we want to stop exposing yellow. So rather than coming up here and deleting this, we can keep our cursor where we are if we're deep down in the file, and instead just hit Option Enter and do Remove from Exposing List. And we can easily add it back. We also see up here that there's this module is being imported with a alias, but that's not being used, and so we can safely do this. We also detect unused imports. So if I import something like view.sprite, let's say, there's nothing in this code that uses that. But if I were to start using it, load sprite, then now that import is marked as being used. Elm's pipelines are pretty cool, but sometimes you want to know what's the type of one of the like sub-expressions within the pipeline, especially as they get more complicated. And since we've built the Elm type system into the Elm plugin itself, we can actually determine the type of each one of these stages of this pipeline. So I can press Control-Shift-P, and it'll give me all the nested expressions in this scope, and it can infer the type of that expression. So this expression, list.drop truncate frame, takes a list of A and returns a list of A. And maybe with default, passing it 0, it takes maybe a number and it gives out a number. And we can also just get the type of the entire expression, the entire body of this function by hitting enter. It tells us that it's a float, and that matches the type annotation. The Elm plugin for IntelliJ also has some neat features for making writing code easier. So here we are in the elm-mogi project again, and we're working with these transforms and directions. And let's suppose we wanted to make something that reverses a direction. Okay, so let's define a new function called upside down, and it takes a direction and it returns a direction. Now here I have the type annotation. I want to generate the function body, so I can hit Option Enter, hit Create. It automatically gives me the parameter name based on the type, and maybe I can shorten that, and then let's pattern match on that. So now I can press Command-Shift-Enter, and it generates all of the case branches. So this will be right, this will be left, this will be bottom, and this will be top. Okay. We also have some support for writing if-else statements easier. So if I say something like if the dir is equal to top, and then I press Command-Shift-Enter, then it kind of fills out the rest of it. So then we'll flip it around, that'll be bottom, and this will be top. Okay, let's clear that all out. One of the coolest things about Elm is that it's really easy to refactor, like especially doing renames. Basically the compiler's got your back, and it'll tell you all the places that you need to fix. But you still need to go around and go fix them all. So let's suppose that, you know, for whatever crazy reason, we wanted to rename this bottom direction to just be BOT. So I can press Shift F6 and get the like quick rename refactoring. And you'll see that it's renaming all the usages on this file, but when I hit return, it's actually going to go and modify it in all of its usages across the entire project. So if I look at the diffs, it changed here, it changed here, changed here. And basically, there's nothing more that you need to do. The code is going to compile at this point. This also works for files and modules. So this file is located over here, components, direction, and if let's suppose that I wanted to rename that to just dir. You know, I want to be very terse. So I'm going to hit refactor, and you'll see it renamed the file, it renamed the module, and it also renamed all of the imports as well. Import components.dir. One little feature that I really like is the ability to create a new Elm file with the correct module hierarchy based on the directory that the file is in. So here we are, we're in the elm-mogi project again, in the source view mogi.elm. Now let's suppose I want to put another module in this view directory. So what I can do is I can press Command-N, create a new Elm file, and let's say it's going to be the view for an enemy. Okay, so I say I want the file to be named enemy, and here it knows, since it put it in the view directory, that the module has to be named view.enemy. And it figures that out based on the source directories in your elm.json. So that's a quick tour of the Elm plugin for IntelliJ. There's a lot more features. If you go onto GitHub and look for IntelliJ-Elm, you'll find this website, and it has demo videos for each feature. So I encourage you to check that out. And the plugin is free, and also IntelliJ, both the IntelliJ Community Edition and PyCharm Community Edition are both free. So you can try this right now, and it works on Mac, Linux, Windows, and it supports Elm 0.18 as well as 0.19.